Hey everyone, and welcome to the latest guide to Necro. This guide is built to assist anyone interested in learning Scourge for open field or in GVGs, no matter how familiar you are with Scourge. Here are the topics for the video along with their timestamps. Scourge's role in Warwick's world is to provide AoE pressure, boon strip, and barrier. In a group environment, your job is to burst people down with your single target and overload the enemy group with your AoE pressure. If you or one of your party members has Illusion of Life, you'll want to begin casting Sand Flare at around 3 seconds left on Illusion. You can also use F3 to add more barrier. If you're out of combat, you can actually just simply mount up before the timer runs out and you'll be just fine. And worst case scenario, you may need to use your F5 for personal barrier just to survive. Your boon corrupts are Axe 3, Focus 5, Scepter 3, Dagger 5, Wall of Corruption, Breach, F2, and F5 when you're using the Spiteful Spirit trait. So the best AoE chain corrupt you have outside of using Wells, Breach, and Shades is actually using Axe 3, Scepter 3, and Dagger 5. So for managing your stats, it's actually quite simple. So you want to have as much Berserker stats as possible with a few Marauder and Cav pieces mixed in. If you're new to Scourge, I recommend starting with at least 3 to 4 Cav pieces and fill the rest in with a mix of Berserker and Marauder. Once you start feeling more comfortable on Scourge, you can actually start to drop some Marauder and Cav pieces for Berserker pieces. So your utility skills on Scourge will actually take priority over everything else, unless you're in a situation where you can use the single target burst combo to generate a downstate. The utilities priority list is as follows. So first off, you want to use Sand Flare before any engage or when your group is about to take a lot of damage. Second on the list is Wall of Corruption. You'll want to use Wall of Corruption before Wall of Suffering just because of its longer cooldown. Third on the list is Wall of Suffering. And fourth is Breach. So Breach will take priority over everything else if you are being engaged on. And lastly, you have Shades. For your weapons, I highly recommend using this setup, Axe Focus and Scepter Dagger. For the Axe Focus weapon set, the priority list is as follows. At number 1, you have Focus 5, number 2, Axe 2, number 3, you have Axe 3, and number 4, you have Focus 4. In this weapon setup, Axe 3 will actually take the highest priority whenever you're in close range. And for Focus 4, you generally only use it if you need Life Force, otherwise you can just skip it. In the Scepter Dagger weapon set, your priority list is as follows. So first off, you have Scepter 3, followed by Scepter 2, Dagger 5, and last in the priority list, you have Dagger 4, which is generally only used to transfer conditions. Dagger 5 is easily one of your most important skills, especially for ranged trades. For ranged trades, you'll want to use Sand Flare to apply AoE barrier, followed by Dagger 5 to apply weakness, and then you can continue using your usual range skills. So if your group generates a down during the range trade, you'll want to swap to your Axe and Focus setup to use that single target burst to finish them off. If you're not in range to get your Axe 2 off, you'll want to try and get your Scepter 2 and Focus 5 off, and maybe even use small shades. For shade usage, it can be a little time consuming to try and place all 3 shades for your shade spikes, so you'll want to be a little bit more optimal. However, if you're in a situation where you can actually have 3 shades down, then go for it. As a general rule, you'll want to have at least 1 shade down for your small shades, which is F2 to F4, and for your big shades, F5, you'll want to have at least 2 shades down. For shade placement, as a general rule, you want to place your shades where you can get the most value. So you can get the most value by placing shades in the middle of enemy groups if they aren't moving too much. You can also place your shades right in front of the driver where he's going to be moving, or right on top of his head. And that's going to require you to kind of predict where they're going to be heading. In order to save time in this guide, I highly recommend watching this video here in order to see how shades are placed in a variety of situations. You can also find this video in the description. The shade rotations themselves are pretty simple. For small shades, you'll want to start with F1 for the placement, followed by F4, F3, and then F2. And if you really want to min-max, you can actually do this rotation in reverse. So first off, you'll use that F2 to strip, and for the small chance that you can actually strip stab, followed by F3 and F4. For Big Shade or your F5, there's actually a few different ways you can do this. So if you're in a situation where you don't have a lot of life force, but you have enough to use F5, then you'll want to place a shade, use F5, and immediately place another shade. However, most of the time, you're going to have a lot of life force, if not max, so in that situation, you'll want to use F1 to place a shade, followed by your small shade rotation, which is F4, F3, F2, or in reverse, followed by F1 to place another shade, and immediately use your big shade, which is F5. This combo section will cover generally every single combo that you're going to need to know. It's important to note that groups will typically reserve Wells, Shades, and Breach for the driver to coordinate damage. So depending on your group, you'll most likely be using weapon skills until those skills are called for. So my favorite combo on Scourge is Focus 5 and Axe 2, which is the highest single target damage combo. With this combo, you can have a huge impact for your group in generating downs. Here are the rest of the combos that you should know on Scourge.
Like the cool blue light, 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 like the cool blue light.
When it comes to movement and positioning, you'll typically want to position yourself in the front to middle of the pack. If you're comfortable with your movement and you trust your supports, you can actually gain a lot of value from playing right behind the commander. However, that's going to require fast reaction times, since any wrong movement can usually get you killed. So it's highly recommended that you play more towards the middle of the pack. I also highly recommend watching this movement tech video shown here, where I teach you how to abuse about face with Scourge. The traits for Scourge are actually pretty simple. So first off, in Spite, you'll want to go top, middle, bottom. And for trait line variations, you can actually take Chill of Death in the second line if you want a little bit more boon strips and GVG settings, but it doesn't do a lot of damage since the nerf, and it's not worth taking in open field, so generally Awakening is the best trait here. For the third line, you can also take Close to Death for more spike damage at the cost of boon strip. Curses is also very straightforward with middle, middle, bottom. And for Scourge, you'll want to go top, middle, bottom. You can also take Nourishing Ashes if you're in a GVG setting and you're really struggling with life force. However, Abrasive Grit is generally the chosen trait here. As a reminder, it's important to know that nobody is perfect and you'll only learn by playing more, analyzing your mistakes, and making improvements for next time. You can also find a written version of this guide in the video description below, along with a link to some gameplay videos. So I hope you found the guide helpful, and feel free to send me a message on Discord or in-game if you have any questions.